Hello and welcome. We are in Lesson 2, Mixed Texture and Colored Warp. This is the Epically Creative Weaving course, Module 3B, and I am Amy D. McKnight. In this lesson, you will learn how to select yarns for and create a mixed textured and colored warp, some ideas for how to weave a mixed textured and colored warp, why and how to weave a mixed textured or colored warp, mixed color or textured warp. Keep mixing that up. So these can be a fun way to make one-of-a-kind fabrics from the start. And it's also a great way to use up those random bits of yarn and yarn balls. All right, so you want to start out by deciding the length that you want your finished piece of cloth. And of course, you need to do a guide string. You're going to make that and set it aside. Like usual, go ahead and mark your width in your heddle with some waste yarn. And, you know, when I was starting out, when I was making this particular scarf piece of cloth, ended up being a scarf, I didn't really have an idea totally of what I wanted it to finally be, but I knew what type of yarns I wanted to put together. So just have an idea of maybe what you want it to be or a feel of how you want it to feel, and then grab those yarns. What your finished product will become will depend on the type of fiber you're using. So you want to keep that in mind as you gather the yarns. If you're looking for something that's going to be wearable and light, you want to use those type of yarns. If you're looking for something that's going to be washed you probably are not going to want to use wool. So just keep those things in mind as you are getting your yarns together. So when you have a kernel of an idea and you've got the yarns that inspired you, you're going to warp your loom. Now, remember those random yarn balls from an earlier lesson? If you don't have enough yarn for a lot of warp strands in one color, maybe just use it for 1 or 2 warp threads and then save the little bit of leftovers to be used in the weft. That way you can tie the warp and the weft together. So here is how you're going to create the warp. Now, you're going to choose your colors. You're going to get an idea of how you might want to put them together. So feel free to organize them in a way that is pleasing to your eye. So you want to get that first yarn. You're going to tie it on as usual to the back apron rod. Of course, you're going to follow your warping board path hybrid or follow it to your warping peg. And this is just a note, to keep your yarn from sagging when you're doing direct warp, you either want to use a warping board or 2 with the hybrid method if you want to, use the warping board hybrid method, or put multiple tables together so that the warp doesn't hang in the distance between the warping peg and the back beam. If you're stretching your yarn over a long ways, your yarn's going to start sagging under its own weight, and that's going to cause tension problems down the line. I warned you. Anyway, now it's time to have some fun. Skip several slots and start again. Don't worry about what's happening on the back beam. We're going to fix that all later. Yes, it's going to look like a rat's nest. It's going to look like something insane, and that is perfectly fine. I will show you how to clean up this mess later. So you're going to get yarn, measure a warp length or 2, tie off, and get your next yarn. You're going to tie on and fill in an area or 2. You're going to skip around, do only a couple of slots, and then tie off. If you want more, you can always tie back on again. I know this is heresy. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. You want to continue until you have your random warp. And that's how it looks from above. Now, here's a warning to you. It is probably best to start with smooth, very sturdy yarns, i.e. yarns that are not prone to snapping, because highly textured yarns can be done in this way, and I'm actually demonstrating doing that, but it's maybe not the best idea to start because some of these threads are crossed in the front. They're not going to be crossed in the back, and it can be a pain to wind on. All right, so now, of course, we're going to secure our warp in multiple places with ties. You can do this whether or not you're using a warping board. If you're using a warping peg, it's a good idea to secure your warp. It'll help you when you wind on. And you should be working at a table or have the warp in a safe place for the next few steps. because we're going to carefully pull through the heddle toward the back. We're going to carefully pull the warp through the heddle toward the back because we want to have some at the back for what we're about to do next, because we're about to cut the warp from the back beam so that we can clean up that mess. Now, honestly, if this freaks you out, don't worry, you don't have to do this. Just skip this part and just carefully wind it on. Me personally, I'd rather not have a rat's nest behind my heddle, so I'm going to fix the ends. And for those of you who want to, you can. If you don't, it's no big deal. All right, so we're going to pull an inch or so of thread and tie the rest into a loose knot. And then we're just going to tie it into bundles. Now, this procedure is going to allow you to further move your threads around and minimize the cross threads at the back of the heddle. And you can also go ahead and slay the holes, or you can move the threads around into different areas as need be. Now, don't go too crazy at first because you'll have some tangles in the front of your heddle if you go too crazy, but I'll show you how to deal with them. Remember, we're using smooth yarn to start for this very reason. And you want to slay about an inch, then tie a whole overhand knot and secure if you are threading the holes at this time. I'm going to repeat across. Next, you're going to lash onto the back beam. You don't have to be super pressed about tension because you're going to be pulling the warp in the front as you wind on, so the tension will pretty much take care of itself. You just want to secure it to the back beam. And then you're going to wind on using paper as usual. All right, so let me go back one. If you are not comfortable lashing on, then go ahead and use surgeon's knots to tie onto the back beam. All right, so my preference is lashing on. That's just a personal preference. I'm not saying that it's better or worse than any other. It's just the way that I learned, and I enjoy doing it that way as opposed to tying on. But if you prefer tying on, then go ahead and tie it onto the back beam and keep it rolling. Okay. All right. So as you're winding on, if you reach an area that has tangles, I want you just to strum like a beautiful harp or a guitar or some type of stringed instrument, or beat it or shake it like you would shake the harnesses of a horse. All right. We're not going to comb it with our fingers. Don't comb with your fingers. When you reach the end of winding on, secure to the front beam using your preferred method. You're done. Weave something beautiful. Here's some ideas for weaving your warp. If you don't want your finished piece to be too busy, consider using a solid weft in a complementary color, or repeat a color in the warp if you have a lot of it. Or if you want to go full out wild and wonderful, create some random weft balls in the same colors and textures and fibers as the warp. I mean, that's just go for it. I like to go for it, so I ain't mad at you if you do. The sky and your imagination is the limit as to what you can do with this particular technique. All right, so I shot a video as I was warping up the warp that was shown in these pictures. If you want to watch over my shoulder, you can do that over the shoulder video. It's going to be after this particular video, and it's going to be mixed colored / texture warp. All right, y'all, so in this lesson, you learned how to select yarns for and create a mixed texture colored warp. You got some ideas of how to weave a mixed textured or colored warp. Ideas mean nothing unless you do something with them. So I just want you to take action now. Weave along with me or after the video as I demonstrate how to warp a mixed color or textured warp. Or if you haven't warped your loom already, go ahead and warp along with me as I show you how to do some of these things. If you haven't already, go ahead and download the Planning in the Warp game board and fill it out as you go. You'll be able to tick off each of these techniques that you're learning, which is super fun. I like ticking boxes. It makes me smile. I don't know about you. Let me know in the comments below if you like ticking boxes too. And again, as always, let me invite you to join my weaving community, myweavingcommunity.com/join. And if it's not open when you go to that link, just, get on the wait list, because we have an amazing group of people in there and we would love to welcome you. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below. Let me know if you like to tick boxes or if you're looking forward to weaving a wacky warp. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Ring that notification bell and share this video. In the next lesson, you're going to learn what a crammed and spaced warp is and how to warp a crammed and spaced warp, as well as some ideas for how to weave your warp. I cannot wait to share these ideas with you, so I will see you in the next video. Bye.